Hey everybody, this is Axel from Parliamo Inglese, and I wanted to do a series of videos talking about how to do the various writing tasks that you find both on the B2 first exam as well as the C1 advanced exam. So today I thought that I would look at the essay that you have to write on the B2 first exam to begin with. So what I have here is I have an example question taken from one of the, I believe one of the Cambridge practice exam books. And so I thought as well, instead of just making a video about how to do it, I thought what I would actually do is record myself writing one of these essays, and I will walk you through my thinking process as I complete the essay. And I also want to do that as well because I tend to work with a lot of students who are professionals. Many of them have backgrounds in academia, for example, or maybe they work in research and other professional fields that require, a lot of writing, a lot of thinking. And they really have a tendency to overthink these kinds of tasks. Um, if they're writing in their own native language, for example, there's usually an expectation that when you write an essay, you're going to want to use a number of really impressive ideas. You want to use lots of really fancy vocabulary, fancy sentences to pull everything together. And when they try to use the same approach on one of these essays, it becomes really difficult for them. They have really hard time generating ideas. They sort of get blocked trying to think about what to say. And so I really just want to demonstrate that these essays are actually really simple to do. They don't require a ton of stress when we're generating our ideas. In fact, from Cambridge's point of view, they're really only interested in how we are expressing our ideas. They're interested in the quality of our English. So when you're writing these tasks, you should really be focusing on the quality of your English, the quality of your writing, and they are less interested in the quality of your ideas. So when you're generating ideas about what to talk about, go with the most straightforward thing. It could be something really stereotypical that every other student has thought about. And that's absolutely fine. Go with the ideas that are the easiest to talk about, that are easiest to generate ideas about, that really anybody can talk about, because we are not here to impress the examiner. We are not marked on the quality of our ideas. We are only marked on our ability to complete the task, how well we write when completing that task, how well we communicate our ideas, but the quality of those actual ideas doesn't really matter. So I want to show you that these are actually these essays can be really fairly straightforward, fairly stress-free. And so I'm going to walk you through that, and I'm going to show you what I think about when I approach these essays, and hopefully that will help you as well. So on the B2 first exam, you have like an hour 20 minutes to do two tasks. And like I said before, the essay is always mandatory. So everybody needs to know how to write an essay. So you'll have about 40 minutes to write an essay. So I'm going to put 40 minutes here on the clock. Yeah. And like I said, is this starting? Okay, there we go. So I'm going to put 40 minutes on the clock. And I'm going to show you just how simple it is to write these essays. So the first thing I've done here is I've taken the question. Like I said, it came from one of those practice exam books. And before we do anything, we have to actually analyze the question, because if we don't know what the question is, if we don't understand it, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be impossible for us to get full points under task achievement. So we really have to pay attention to what exactly is it that they want us to write about, and really understand what we have to do. Some of these essays have an opinion element. Well, you're going to have to talk about, well, do you agree? Do you disagree? So it's really important to know exactly what kind of essay we're dealing with. So in your English class, you have been talking about different ways in which you can protect the environment. So we know here we're talking about protecting the environment. Now your English teacher has asked you to write an essay. And of course, like with any essay, that means that we're going to be using formal language. So for example, we're going to try to avoid the use of personal personal pronouns, so like I and we. We're going to try to avoid using contractions. We're also going to try to use more impersonal language, for example, as well as a more formal register. So less phrasal verbs and things of that nature. So write an essay using all the notes. And of course, as always, give reasons for your point of view. So on any of these Cambridge exams, they're always going to want you to be able to back up your opinions and ideas using examples and reasons. So it's always important to pick things that you're going to be comfortable talking about, things that are going to be easy to generate ideas about. Another thing to note as well, if you want to put in a fact, for example, to add some support to an argument, your information does not have to be 100% accurate. So we are allowed to make up information here. Cambridge, it's not like a lie detector test. They're not going to go and fact check the information that you put into your essay. So just as long as your facts seem plausible, then that's absolutely fine. So that's another really important thing to remember. Some people have trouble thinking about like facts and examples, but we can make things up. Like as long as what we put in there is reasonably credible, reasonably believable, is absolutely fine. So we're going to give reasons for our point of view. So what can people do to protect the environment? So there's no, for this particular essay, there's no, like we don't have to choose which is the most important, or we don't have to say whether we believe something or not, or how possible is something. So that's fine. There's no opinion in this essay. So that's great. And then we have the notes below. And so we have to make sure that we write about all of these points. As it says up here, we have to include all of the notes. So we're going to talk about recycling, using, alternative forms of transportation, so bicycles and walking, and as well as our own ideas. So, okay, so what are we going to write for our own idea? Recycling, bicycles and walking. I've been talking a lot about fashion right now in the groups that I organize for English learners. And also, if you're not in my Telegram groups yet, you should definitely check them out. I share lots of information, lots of vocabulary, lots of posts, and I try to center everything around a topic. So right now, fashion is fresh in my mind. Like I said, always use something that's easy for you to talk about. Your ideas do not have to be incredible. You just need an idea, something easy to talk about, and you're done. Don't worry. So we're going to talk about fashion and really clothing. I think the recycling of clothing, maybe. Recycling of clothing, maybe sustainable clothing, maybe, or maybe putting secondhand clothing, something like that. I'm going to think about it. So, okay, perfect. So, so now that we've analyzed the question, we know exactly what we're writing about, which is absolutely fine. I want to talk really quickly here about the word limit. The word limit. So on the B2 first exam, you'll be expected to write between 140 to 190 words. These are only guidelines. So that said, do not waste time counting your words. Cambridge has essentially decided that, you should be able to roughly be able to answer the questions using between 140 to 190 words. However, if you, at the end of your essay, you've written 135 words, but you've included all the information, that's fine. You will not lose points. You will not be penalized for writing less words. And in the same notion, if you write more than 190 words, you will not get penalized for having more words than necessary. However, you have to make sure that you're not adding additional information. If you write less than 140 words, it's quite possible that maybe you've missed something. So be aware of that. And if you write more than 190 words, it's quite possible that you've added irrelevant information, and adding irrelevant information can actually bring down your mark. So we want to make sure that everything that we include on our essay is very relevant to the task, to the points that we're writing about, and that we're not adding any additional irrelevant information. Okay, perfect. So the next thing that we have to do is we have to do planning. And some people think that planning is a waste of time. I'm going to tell you, as somebody who's written a ton of these essays, it's not. It's actually really essential to being able to write these essays really quickly. It actually saves time because then you can look at your plan. You're going to know exactly what you're writing about. You're going to know that you have everything in here that you need. So you're going to get full marks on task achievement. Your essay is going to be incredibly organized, which is going to help your skill, get more points under the organization marks. And so it's really good to do. So like I said, the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to plan out my essay. So every essay needs to have an introductory paragraph. In the introductory paragraph always consists of roughly like the same things. The first sentence is going to be some sort of paraphrase, some sort of reference to the original question. So paraphrase of the original question, and then we're going to have some sort of what I'm going to call a thesis statement. The thesis statement is going to reference the 3 points that you're going to talk about. So and so what we're doing there is we're just letting the examiner know exactly what's coming in our essay, and just putting it out really clearly what the essay is going to talk about. And then what I also do is I like to, if there's if there's an opinion, which there's not here, but if there is an opinion, I also add it in the introductory paragraph. And I know that some people they save it for the conclusion, which is okay, but then some people forget about it. So I always include my opinion right up in the introductory paragraph. So at the end of my essay, I know that I have not forgotten that information. Everything is there. The examiner knows exactly what's coming, and it's just a lot better. So I highly recommend putting all of that information right up front in your introductory paragraph, because it's really important that we don't miss key information. But like I said, like this essay here does not have an opinion component to it, so I'm not going to have to do that. So then what we're going to do is I'm going to plan out what I'm going to put into my individual paragraphs. So, and what I like to do is have like one body paragraph per point. So the first one is going to be about recycling. So we need to, the first sentence is always going to be reference the point that we've chosen. So in this case, it's going to be about recycling. And then what we need to do is we need to include like reasons and examples. For this kind of essay, I think what might work best is giving an example about something that they can do and then talking about the outcome. So So we could talk about recycling. We could talk about how recycling plastic in particular, maybe, and then less plastic clogging of the oceans and waterways. That would be like a direct consequence of recycling plastic. So, and it's really that simple. So, you know, they've one sentence referring to the point, one sentence referring to the example, one sentence referring to the outcome. Done. Next one, we're going to talk about using bikes and walking. So the first sentence again is just going to be referencing the point. The second sentence is going to be about giving some sort of example. Maybe in this case, could do some sort of like a statistic about something. Maybe, I don't know, like cities that invest in this kind of infrastructure report to have, I don't know, 20% or 10, 30 less emissions than cities without. I have no idea if that's true. Doesn't matter. As long as it's kind of credible, we can sort of fluff our facts a bit. So, and that would just reduce, the direct consequence of that is reducing air pollution, right? And reducing emissions, CO2 emissions to be exact. So, okay, perfect. So last one, I said I was going to talk about fashion. So again, the first sentence is going to reference the point. And then we're going to give, so I mentioned about having to recycle clothing or recycling, maybe using secondhand shops. So focus on sustainable clothing practices, like maybe using secondhand shops. And the direct consequence of that is going to be leaving less clothing in landfills, because I think it's something like 90% of all clothing ends up in landfills, like a really small percentage of that ends up getting recycled. So it's really important for us to find alternative ways to either fix or give our clothing away or donating it so that other people can buy it and purchase it, and focus on sustainable clothing practices. And then finally, our last paragraph is going to be the conclusion. It's a conclusion. And our conclusion is essentially just, if you're really strapped for time and you're not quite sure what to put in your conclusion, just look at your introductory paragraph and paraphrase it, because your conclusion is just going to be a summary of everything that was already in your essay. If there's an opinion, it's going to restate that opinion, and it's not going to include any additional information. So it's really a summary of the key points that were already in your essay. So the conclusion is just going to basically restate the 3 points. And if there's an opinion, restate the opinion, which obviously we're not going to do, but if this was an opinion essay, we would include that in the conclusion. And no new information. Some people feel like they can put additional information in the conclusion, but that tends to create confusing essays. It's really confusing. It'll bring down your marks under organization. So don't add anything new. Just restate what was already said. No new information. And that's fine. That will help boost your marks under organization. Okay, perfect. So now that we know exactly what we're writing about, we can go ahead and we can write our essay. So what I'm going to do is actually, I'm just going to like take this again just so I can look at it. So her answer. Second here. So when we are writing, we always have to, we can never just simply restate the question. We always have to put it into our own words. So we need to paraphrase. And there's typically 4 ways that we can paraphrase. You can substitute words. So synonyms, for example, the environment, for example, maybe a synonym for that would be the planet. Help could be aid, for example. So there we're directly swapping one word for another. Another thing that we can do is change the word form. And so what this means is, for example, you turn nouns into adjectives, and adjectives can become verbs, etc., etc. So in this case, maybe environment could be environmental. Help could become, I don't know, helping or helpful, you know what I mean? So we basically take the root word and see what other sort of similar words can come off of that same root word. Another thing that we can do is called a concession. And a concession that I can spell. And what a okay, there we go, concession. So what a concession basically is what you're going to do is state the opposite opinion of what you want to say, and then say what you want to say. So it'd be something like, lots of people think there's nothing we can do to save their environment. However, in reality, there's tons of things we can do. So it's essentially like that. And of course, too, we can reorder the words. So instead of talking about people first, we could talk about environment first and put people second, and change the word order of the original statement. So 4 things that we can do in order to paraphrase. So for here, let's see. So what can people do to help protect the environment? So let's go with my concession, because that was great. Okay, so a lot of people believe that there is nothing to be done to solve the current to safeguard the planet. However, the reality is that there are many things that everyday people can do which will greatly reduce the amount of waste. What are we talking about? See, this is why I have to look at the notes, because I will forget what I'm writing about. You will too. So it's really important to have a plan. However, the reality is that there are many things everyday people can do. Here, such as recycling, using alternative forms of transportation, and reusing fashion. However, the reality is, and maybe we'll get rid of this. However, there are many things that everyday people could do, such as recycling, using alternative forms of transportation, and reusing fashion that will protect the environment. That can protect the environment. This essay, yeah, maybe I'll just like leave it. The thing too is that 140, 190 words are not a lot. So if you have everything written that you need to write, don't worry about adding more, okay? We're making this simple. This is really simple. I'm telling you, these are really simple. So the first thing we're gonna do is talk about recycling. So one, let's see, for starters, to begin with, every day people can find ways of recycling the plastic products that we use. Do we have to talk specifically about plastic? No, I chose about, right, okay. I chose recyclable plastic. So to begin with, everyday people can find ways of recycling instead of contributing to the waste problem. Every day people can find ways of recycling instead of contributing to the waste problem. For example, most plastics can be recycled or reused or repurposed for other things. I don't know. Repurposed for other uses, maybe. Other uses. Currently, by recycling less trash ends up in our waterways, and there is less plastic to clog our oceans, clog the oceans, right? We're trying to get rid of the personal pronouns. So to begin with, everyday people can, everyday people, every day when it's together, that's an adjective. And then otherwise, every day I take a walk. There, every is the adjective for day. But yeah, everyday people can find ways of recycling. Everyday people can find ways of recycling instead, or I guess every day people can find ways of recycling their trash instead of adding it to the waste problem, instead of contributing to the waste problem. The waste problem. For example, most plastics can be recycled or repurposed for other uses. By recycling, as a consequence, less trash ends up in our waterways and doesn't clog the oceans. Okay, easy. Next, using bikes and walking. Another thing most people can do is walking and biking. These are modes of transportation available to almost everyone. In fact, using these Using these alternative forms of transport significantly reduces the amount of CO2 emitted into the atmosphere. In fact, cities that invest in this kind of infrastructure report to have 30% less emissions than cities without it, without any. Okay, done. Last one. Fashion. So reference the point. So fashion, finally, fashion, almost 90% of all clothing ends up in landfills instead of being recycled. So people can buy secondhand, or people can donate their clothing instead, or find other ways of fixing and extending the life of their clothes. This, in the end, will reduce the waste in landfills. Okay, so our conclusion. As in conclusion, there are many things the average person can do, such as recycling clothing, recycling plastic, and walking and biking to reduce their environmental, how about this, reduce their environmental footprint. That's like sort of a collocation. We talk about reducing our environmental footprint. It means to basically create less waste, do less harm to the environment, and things like that. Okay, so there we go. There's our essay, our base essay. So of course we should always take a couple minutes at the end. Actually, let's see what we're doing for time. We have like 11 minutes and I've spent so much time talking. So that's fine. So a lot of people believe that there is nothing to be done to safeguard the planet. However, there are actually many things that everyday people can do, such as recycling, using alternative forms of transportation, and reusing clothing and reusing clothes that can protect the environment. So to begin with, every day, people can find ways of recycling their trash instead of contributing to the waste problem. For example, most plastics can be recycled or repurposed for other uses. As a consequence, less trash ends up in waterways, and it doesn't clog the oceans. Another thing most people can do is walking and biking. These are modes of transportation available to almost everyone. Using these alternative forms of transport significantly reduces the amount of CO2 emitted into the atmosphere. In fact, cities that invest in this kind of infrastructure report having 30% less emissions than cities without. And I'll just leave the without. Finally, almost 90% of clothing ends up in landfills instead of being. In fact, almost 90% of all clothing ends up in landfill instead of being recycled. People can donate their clothing instead, or find ways of fixing and extending the life of maybe their products, their garments. There we go, another word. This, in the end, reduces, can greatly reduce the amount of waste in landfills. So in conclusion, there are many things the average person can do, such as recycling clothing, recycling plastic, and walking and biking to reduce their environmental footprint. Done. So there you have it. This is obviously, I've written more than 190 words. However, as long as everything is on topic, like I said, absolutely fine. We haven't really veered off point here or anything like that. And you see that all of my points are really straightforward. There's nothing in here that like was difficult to come up with. Basically, anybody could have come up with these examples. They're very straightforward, easy. You know, I didn't spend a lot of time really thinking and trying to grapple with some really clever things to put in here. Everything was really straightforward. Another thing that I want to point out as well, if you notice, the language that I used was actually very simple. There's some people believe that in order to write a high scoring essay, they have to use really complex vocabulary, really high level words. But the reality is that what we really want to be able to do is just use topic specific words. Cambridge just wants to know that you're able to take a topic and talk about that topic using words that are very related and specific to that topic, and that you're able to use that vocabulary in an accurate way. So there is nothing in here that I would say that the vast majority of all of these words are words that any B2 level, C1 level student would know. And there's absolutely nothing crazy in here. There's nothing in here that you can't do. Is basically what I'm saying. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you've been able to see that writing these essays actually aren't that challenging. We can go ahead and use very simple ideas, really straightforward ideas, and that we don't have to think of anything brilliant or amazing in order to complete our essays. That it's actually pretty straightforward. And once you write a bunch of these essays, as soon as you get comfortable with the format, comfortable with the language, they actually become really quick to produce. Okay, anyways, I will talk to you soon then. Okay, bye.